Now, this may sound completely counterintuitive, but the most important thing that you need to do if you ever want to have a really impressive natural bodybuilding physique is to completely ignore genetics.
Say what?
That's right. You have to completely ignore genetics. And I know there's a lot of people out there who are saying that genetics is everything in bodybuilding, especially natural bodybuilding. It's either you have it or you don't have it. And no matter how hard you train and no matter what you do, you'll never look at a top natural bodybuilder, nor will you ever have a really impressive physique without using drugs, unless you were naturally gifted and were big to begin with, or when you started lifting weights, you just completely exploded with muscle, which is completely false. A lot of you out there who have the potential to create truly impressive physiques are going to stop and not do everything you need to do because of the fact you're thinking too much about genetics. And because as well, they don't understand the fact that there's actually two very different ways that people build fantastic physiques. Almost like there's two kinds of genetics. And in this video, I'm going to share with you my story because it's going to show you without any doubt whatsoever that if I had allowed myself to really think too much about either having good or bad genetics, I would never have accomplished my dream of becoming a successful natural bodybuilder. So whether you want to step on stage and look impressive or go to the beach and be super confident wearing a swimsuit, this is a hard talk video going about exactly the kind of mindset you need to have to realize your dreams of looking fantastic without using drugs. Now, you may look at me and say that obviously Kevin has fantastic genetics. But here's the thing. All the photographs and all the videos that you see of what I look like does not reflect where I came from, nor does it reflect what it took for me to get there. Hard reality in natural bodybuilding in general, unless you spend a lot of time training a lot of people, you would never realize the fact that there are some people out there who truly have the potential for ridiculously impressive physiques, but you would never know it when you first meet them. And I should know because that's exactly how it was when I started. So here's my story. When I first started training, I was 125 pounds, growing up back in Trinidad, as most of you probably know. And back in those days, all there really was in terms of bodybuilding information came from the magazines. And I remember working so hard, doing everything I could, training as hard as I possibly could. And when I was around 16 years old, there was an article that came out talking about what's called fat-free mass index. And the fat-free mass index was something that the Professional Bodybuilding Federation, the IFBB, was going to implement to try to make bodybuilding a drug-free sport. In that, you'd apply this for someone's height, their weight, and their body fat percentage. And from there, you'd have an idea of how much muscle mass they would have. And you can look at it from a scale to see exactly whether or not they fell into what can be naturally achieved by an individual not using drugs. Needless to say, mainstream professional bodybuilding never went drug-free, but that's another video. Let's get back to my story. And I remember when I first saw it, I was so excited about trying to see exactly where I would fall on that chart. I was 165 pounds or so, 6 feet tall, and my body fat was somewhere around maybe 12, 13%. And I remember plugging in the numbers and doing the math and coming up with the realization that according to my fat-free mass index, I was completely average.
Oh.
Now, that struck a chord and in some ways really hurt because you see, when I first started training, I walked into the gym and back in those days, there were instructors and they were the ones who would kind of give you a routine and tell you what to do and start you off with training. You couldn't just walk into a gym and train on your own. And the instructor at the time had asked me what my goals were. And I said my goal was I wanted to be a bodybuilder. I want to look like a bodybuilder. And he looked at me and he said, "Kid, I'm sorry, it's just not possible. You're too skinny. You don't have the structure. You don't really have the frame. You'll never be a successful bodybuilder. It's just not possible with your genetics." And taking this test not that long afterwards and realizing that my genetics according to the scale were just average kind of reinforced that pain that I felt when he first said that. Because when he first said that to me, I remember biting my lip, went through the whole workout, and it was a bittersweet experience because my first workout in a gym was this magical moment of really feeling alive in a way I'd never really felt before. I loved every single minute of it. feeling a pump like that, using the machines, using the weights, the barbells, the dumbbells. It was literally like opening up a whole world of magic to me. But I remember walking home from the gym that there were some tears going down my eyes because I loved this whole idea of weight training. I just started doing it literally my first day in the gym, but already there was this idea that there was only so far I could go because I didn't have good genetics. And, doing the test, getting that fat-free mass index reading, saying that I was, just average, kind of reinforced what that instructor had said. And I don't think he was trying to hurt me. I don't think he was trying to be mean or anything. But this test kind of threw a monkey wrench in it. It wasn't just this guy in the gym telling me that my genetics really weren't spectacular. It was somewhat of a cold and objective algorithm that was saying that I simply didn't have what it took. And I thought to myself as well that if I was so average in terms of building muscle, I need to work even harder than anybody else in terms of my training and my approach to my nutrition, my rest, recuperation, and recovery, if I want to get anywhere near the goals that I had for myself. That's exactly what I did. And it's also what pushed me to learn as much as I did about bodybuilding and have a very unorthodox approach to everything, always testing as opposed to taking people's opinions or ideas and finding out for myself exactly what's going to work. And that's what led me to the creation of my particular high-intensity training protocol called naturally intense high-intensity training. And at 17 years old, I decided to enter my first bodybuilding competition. And I was so looking forward to it. I had completely transformed myself from that 125-pound kid that started off, and I was so proud of what I accomplished. I was about 175 pounds, I had leaned out, and I was ready to go on stage. And when I saw the other teenage bodybuilders backstage, my heart completely dropped. They were much bigger than I was. Now, some of them were able to openly say they were on steroids, but that didn't change the fact that in my very first natural bodybuilding competition, I came dead last. That's right, dead last. There were 12 teens on that stage. I was number 12 in the running. And I went back to the gym with a very strong feeling that I was completely average, that there was nothing at all spectacular about me, and that I needed to work even harder than before to realize my goals. I wasn't going to use drugs. That wasn't the path I was going to go down, but I was going to go down fighting and see how far I could go. Now, by the time I left Trinidad at 20 years old, I was able to finally crack the top 5 and make it to a night show at 190.5 pounds. But I told myself, because I didn't have fantastic genetics, I had no chance whatsoever against the bodybuilders I was going up against. Bear in mind that back in Trinidad, there were no natural bodybuilding federations. And I didn't even know that natural bodybuilding existed. And so when I came to the US at 20 years old, I had retired the idea of ever being a successful bodybuilding champion in any form or fashion. I loved to train. My focus was on training, and my focus was also on the idea that if I only had average genetics and I put into place this training protocol of really high intensity for short periods of time, I wanted to see how far I could go because I loved to train. I didn't just love to train. I loved the challenge also of the nutrition. I loved how I felt when I trained that hard. I loved how I felt when I ate really well and very cleanly. And the bodybuilding lifestyle was really what got me hooked. It was all about the journey for me, not so much about the end result. Charlie Carollo, who at the time was the vice chairman of one of the top natural bodybuilding federations, came to me and asked me, when am I going to compete next? I told him, I'm not going to compete. I retired from bodybuilding. It's not something for me. I can't really make it in that particular field. I'm not going to do it anymore. And he looked at me and he said, well, how old are you? And I said, well, I'm 24. And he said, get the hell out of here. You can't retire from anything at 24 years old. And the first time someone had said this in this particular context, you have outstanding genetics. And it would be a shame not to see you on stage. In fact, you're going to compete There's a show coming up in September. He turned over to his friend at the front desk, Ian Mercer, who would later become my coach, and said, listen, Ian, get this guy competition ready by September. I want to see him on stage. And all of a sudden, I was back in the game. I was back in getting ready for bodybuilding competitions. Not something I actually wanted to do, but Charlie was a pretty big and imposing figure. And when Charlie said that you were going to do something, you tend to kind of, listen to him. And it also was a very strange thing having someone telling me after all those years that I had good genetics. And for that first competition, when I went backstage, stripped down, started pumping, all the other bodybuilders were looking at me like I was some sort of a freak. And I had never had that before. I was always the underdog. I was always the guy with bad genetics. I was always the guy who, isn't big enough, isn't cut enough, isn't defined enough. His muscles aren't grainy enough. His legs aren't big enough. His arms aren't big enough. His chest isn't big enough. Whereas against natural competitors, I was pretty much above average. And my first competition, the NGA Hercules, I won my class easily. It was almost like a walk in the park. I had never experienced that feeling of being on stage and having an audience receive me the way I did, as if I was somehow or the other exceptional. And that's the thing. I was able to realize my dream of being a successful natural bodybuilder because I always saw myself as completely average. In fact, when I would train clients coming in, I started training clients when I was 17 years old as well. Everybody coming in, I would always think about them as, okay, you're average. Let's see how far you can go. It doesn't matter about genetics. What matters is that you learn to love the lifestyle, that you learn to love the training, that you learn to find a way to make the training something you can do consistently for the rest of your life so you can realize your full potential regardless of where that puts you on the spectrum, but you have a true passion for it and you love how you feel as a result of doing it. That always became the central focus. And anyone who's trained with me will know that for a fact. I'm all about how you feel. And so that being said, had I, like so many others, when I realized that I only had average genetics, had I stopped, had I quit, had I said, well, what I've accomplished so far isn't good enough, I'm not good enough, so why bother going forward? I would never have realized my dream of being a successful natural bodybuilder. I also would never have gotten to a place where I've been able to help so many people with my example of what I was able to accomplish as a lifetime natural athlete training less than an hour per week with high intensity workouts. But here's the other thing. If I never made it as a natural bodybuilder, if I never stepped on stage and won even one trophy, it'd still be completely worth it. Which is why you also need to completely ignore the idea of genetics and just do it. And you put on a 1/2 inch on your biceps. That's huge. Whether or not you end up winning any natural bodybuilding competitions, whether or not you go on the beach and you're the most built person on there, it doesn't matter. Look at what you did and look at how fantastic you feel in doing it. Think about all the health benefits that come from training regularly and eating a diet of unprocessed foods that comes from a natural bodybuilding lifestyle. Think about how healthy you're going to be. And I can't tell you exactly what it's like to be somewhere in your 50s and feel almost exactly the same way you felt when you're in your 20s. It is amazing. It is completely amazing. It doesn't matter how you look. It all matters and comes down to how you feel. And you're going to feel fantastic. And don't you let anybody out there who looks great, who may be a successful influencer, successful bodybuilder or actor who transforms and has a wonderful physique, don't you ever look at them and compare yourself to them and let that get you down. Focus on your own joy. Focus on your own path, because the path itself is the reward. My reward is the fact I got to do it. I get to do it every day and I get to still do it. That's the real reward. And if you have that as your focus, you're going to go places. Now, I've always lived my life the attitude of whom much is given, much is expected. And so I try to share as much of my experience as I possibly can to hopefully help as many people as possible. And I hope this video is one you come back to time and time again Whenever you start feeling a little down on yourself and the fact you think you don't have what it takes, because you do. And the path itself is the reward. So stay natural, believe in yourself, know that I believe in you, and as always, excel.